Okay, good morning. Today is Monday, the 5th day of Cheshvan, and we continue the second lesson in chapter 26 in Igeret Hakodesh. Yesterday we started by raising some questions, and the Zohar, the Alter Rebbe brings, which again reiterates the importance of learning the Chassidus, the Tanya. Sometimes when you learn the Zohar, the Kabbalah, without the proper explanations, it can lead you to misunderstand the whole concept. So the Alter Rebbe was raising questions on what it says, a very mysterious Zohar that talks about the difference between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and bad, saying that talks about the revealed part of the Torah is considered the tree of good and bad, and the mystical part of the Torah is called the tree of life. And those, the Alter Rebbe raised lots of questions. How could you say so? We know that even back in those days, they didn't even have that much study of the mystical part of the Torah. It was very, very secret. Only later on, in the time of the Arizal said that in these days is a mitzvah to publicize this teaching of the Chassidus, of the Kabbalah. It was obviously before the time of the Chassidus. So the mystical part of the Torah, it says only in this time is a mitzvah, but not in those days. In those days before the Arizal, certainly in the time of the Talmud, the Mishnah, then so that was something that only very few people learned. Not only that, Alter Rebbe asked also those people that were so involved in learning the Torah, those people that the Torah was their sole occupation, they wouldn't even stop to pray, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And of course, we know that prayer is not something just like, you're coming to ask for a shopping list of what you need. Prayer is something that connects you to Hashem. Prayer is something that elevates you. So didn't they need to do this? And yet they said, we find out they studied the Torah. And what Torah did they study? It wasn't mainly the mystical part. It was the revealed part, the questions, the answers, what is permissible, what is not permissible. So obviously we cannot say that this part of the Torah is considered the good and bad. Another question he asked, what we mentions over there, that in the time, it says the time of before, in the time of the past, that the sages would have their food from the illiterate people. And when time of Mashiach comes, then they will have the food that the illiterate will be fed by the sages. This also needs explanation, as we will elaborate on this today. In today's shir, the Alter Rebbe continues to raise some of the questions that we need clarifications in this Zohar that we quoted, that people who misunderstood the Zohar can get the whole thing wrong. And so let's see inside further questions that Alter Rebbe is raising today. This is the Alter Rebbe. There is yet further cause to be exceedingly amazed at how those who lack understanding comprehended this question from the Raya Mehemne, from the Zohar. And what is it? So the question is asking now, what he said, the Zohar quoted that in the time of Mashiach, we're not going to be occupied in learning the laws of forbidden and permissible. This is mixture of good and bad. We will be the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. So the Alter Rebbe is asking, how is it possible? Won't we need to know the laws of good and of what is permissible, what is not? Obviously, we will, even when Mashiach comes, we still will need to know all those laws. איך אפשר, says the Alter Rebbe, שלימויס המשיח לא יצטרכו לידע הלכות איסור והתר וטומאה וטהרה? How is it possible that in the days of Mashiach, people will not need to know the laws of ritual prohibitions and permissions and of impurity and purity? Ki eich ishchatu hakabonos, that of course they'll need to know, because they're going to have to bring the offering in the Beis Hamikdash, the sacrifices. There is laws of what is permissible, what is not. Eich ishchatu hakabonos, how will they slaughter the sacrifices? Not only the sacrifices in the temple, vegam chulin. What if you want to have a barbecue? You're going to have shish kebab. You're going to need to have a proper slaughtering. So the laws of the kosher slaughtering will still apply, and you will need to know. How will you slaughter the animals? Im lo yedu ilchos drasa v'chalada v'shehiyah. How will you do this if you will not know the laws of drasa? Drasa means those are things, the way complicated laws regarding the slaughtering of the animal. There's 5 points what the halacha discusses here, quotes 3 of them, how and it has to be done. Drasa means the pressuring. If you take the knife and you, instead of smoothly cutting, you pressure the knife, then that's you push the knife and that's how you cut, then it's not good. Chalada means hidden, that his knife is hidden between the pipes that you have to sign, rather than to have it revealed. To put it, chalada comes from the word chulda. Chulda means like a mouse that is going in hidden places. So when you put the knife in such a way that is hidden, not revealed, that also makes it, disqualifies the shchita. V'shehiyah means pausing. If you don't do it at once, you go and you pause in the middle, that disqualifies the slaughtering. Those things disqualify the slaughtering. Likewise, also the laws regarding the knife. The knife has to have a perfect knife. The sheichet, if you go to Kaparas in Crown Heights or any places when they take the shchita, they slaughter the chickens. You see from time to time the sheichet takes the knife and he checks it with his nail. He gives it to the other sheichet to check the knife with his nail to make sure that there is no blemish. Those are laws that need to be studied and known. So obviously in the time of Mashiach, we still will need to know those laws. Will there ever be born a man who is his very nature, by his very nature, will inadvertently slaughter without she'iyah and drasa? In other words, will we be like robots and will do those things, the shchita, without any problems, know exactly the way the halacha requires? The same thing is also a gamma sakin, the knife. You have such a knife that they will never be damaged? Obviously not. So again, this is the question. For those who misunderstood the Zohar, to think that the Zohar says that in the time of Mashiach, we're not going to need to know, to study those laws. We're only going to study the mystical laws. Obviously, says the Alter Rebbe, that's not true, because we are going to need to know those laws. More than that, furthermore, Arba Ilchis Chelev Edam Shar Isurim. There's other laws of what is the chelev, the fat that is permissible, fat that is prohibited, and the blood, and a lot of laws that needs to be done. Not only that, says the Alter Rebbe, there's also the Tumas HaMeis, v'gam Tumas HaMeis yitzrichim leida. People will also need to know the laws regarding the impurity imparted by a corpse. Why? Because even in the time of Mashiach, people will die. Obviously, they're not going to be tragedies like, God forbid, like we have today. But it says people will, at least in the first stage, people will not live forever. People will live long life, but even a person that will die 100 years, it says, is considered like a child. Yitzrichim leida, k'dichsiv, and it says, Ana ben shana yamas, ben meya shana yamas. A young man will die at age of 100. So yes, there will be a person passes at 100 will be considered a young man that died. But still, people will die, and you will need to know the laws. They become impure. In addition to that, says the Alter Rebbe, v'gam tumas yeledes tzorich leida. There's also, furthermore, it is necessary to know the laws regarding the impurity of a woman. Because a woman, when she gives birth, obviously, when there is blood, that she becomes impure. And when Mashiach comes, there will also be birth, pregnancies. As it says, when Mashiach comes, there will be a pregnant woman and one who gives birth together. They all will be redeemed. Not only that, it says, pregnant and birth together. There is an explanation that says that also there will be women that will be pregnant and giving birth at the same time, meaning that when you have, just like when you have twins, you give birth one after another. So when Mashiach comes, it says that there will be also giving birth, not only one after another, minutes apart, there can be also days and weeks apart. And we can have today from the same conception, you have giving birth day after day, just like chickens lay eggs day after day. That's what it says. This is one of the things that will be also in the coming of Mashiach. And it says, Im teilad isha b'chol yom ibiya achas. If a woman will give birth every day, this successive birth resulting from one marital union. So yes, those things will change, will be a little different than what we are accustomed to, but the laws of impurity will still be the same. Nevertheless, the laws with respect to the restrictions resulting from her impurity will not change. So certainly, even in the days of Mashiach, we will need to know those laws. Says the Alter Rebbe, there is no need to dwell on something so obvious. When the entire Talmud and the Midrashim make known the reverse of the misleading impression formed by the superficial reading of our quotation from Raya Mehemne. So those who learned the Raya Mehemne in that way, they misunderstood to say that in the time of Mashiach we will not study those laws. The Parich Ilchas al Mashiach, for example, the question is asked, a law for the time of Mashiach? In other words, when, with certain laws in the Torah, it brings down the laws and it says, those are laws that is not applicable today, but in the time of Mashiach. So obviously, in the time of Mashiach, we will need to know those laws. We find also in the Talmud that says, There's many places, many times in the Talmud, when the Talmud asked a question and there is no answer, and the Talmud says teiku. Teiku means like it's concealed, like in a tik. A tik means like a put it in a pocketbook. It's like it's concealed in a bag. The word teiku also has an abbreviation of Tov Yud Kuf Vav Tishbi Yetaretz Kushyos Ve'abayos, which means Tishbi is Eliyahu Hanavi. He will come and he will answer all the questions. So certainly we will learn the questions that needs to be answered will be answered in the time of Mashiach. And now the Alter Rebbe goes back to the other point. When we said that, you know what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? The sages will no longer be needed to be fed. The scholars will no longer be needed to be sustained by the illiterate people, but they will be sustained by themselves in the time of Mashiach. So the Alter Rebbe is going to ask, that's such a novelty, never happened before? It happened before. That's the way it was in the time of the temple before. This is the question that Alter Rebbe asked further. Also, and not understandable, Mashakos of the Loispanis of Talmidei Chachomei Amioretz. That the Torah scholars will not be sustained by illiterate people, and so on. V'loi me'erev rav, and also they will not be sustained by the mixed multitude, the ochlin, posel, tomei, ve'osel, chas v'sholem. That which that they eat, those who eat from which is ritually unfit, impure, and prohibited, heaven forfend. So it says the Alter Rebbe, what's the big novelty? The time of Mashiach, that's when they will not eat from this. They will be self-sustained. Says the Alter Rebbe, the same thing happened in the time of the Second Temple. Even during the time of the Second Temple, they were not supported by the illiterate people who ate that which was ritually unfit and prohibited ever offend. Because the Torah scholars, they had fields and vineyards of their own, just like the illiterate people. They had plenty. There's the story of Rabbi Tarfon once going. He was a very big sage and also a wealthy person, and he was walking in his field, and the workers, they were about to kick him out. They wanted to kick him out. What are you doing here? They didn't recognize him, didn't know that he was the boss. So we see that the sages had of their own. So and being that they had of their own, nevertheless, what were they involved with the study of the simple laws of what is permissible, what is forbidden? That's what says Alter Rebbe. Afilu acher you oiskim belimud isu veheta v'tumah v'tayra. Nevertheless, they engaged in the study of the laws of isur and heter, the laws of which is forbidden and permissible, and impurity and purity. Kol azugay she'oyavei me'isheni. For example, all the pairs of leading sages who lived at the time of the Second Temple. You know, the peers, like we see in the Mishnah, it says Shmaya and Avtalia and Ilal and Shammai, all these peers that were studying in those days. Ve'emidu talmidim la'alofim urevavos, and they raised disciples in legal aspects of the Torah in the thousands and tens of thousands. And yet, when it came to the time of the study of the secret part, the mystical part of the Torah, that was very concealed. The limud anista, the hester chulu, the study of the esoteric of the Torah took place in secret, and so on. So there, the Alter Rebbe finishes with the questions on top of the questions we asked yesterday. And yes, I promise you, Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow we'll start with the answers. So this is the end of today's shir. Any questions you may ask now. Thank you all for joining, and don't forget to share this and subscribe and
friends.
Morning, Rabbi Cohen.